Hi everyone, today we are going to read the chapter The Thief's Story from Class 10 book Footprints Without Feet. The chapter, which is titled The Thief's Story, is actually about a story of a 15-year-old boy who was a thief. He always tried to dupe people, he deceived people, he robbed people of their money. But when he met a man called Anil, his life was completely transformed. And at the end of the story, we see that this 15-year-old thief did not have the guts to steal money from this man, Anil. Why? We'll read the story and know about it. The story is written by Ruskin Bond. So in today's session, we will understand the story, do its summary, significance of the title, the moral of the story, and then later on, summary in written and question answers in the written form. But before we start with the session, you all know, we first know about the writer. So today, let's have a look at Ruskin Bond's life. Ruskin Bond was born on 19th May 1934 in Kasauli, India. Ruskin Bond is an Indian author and poet of British descent. He was awarded Sahitya Akademi Award in 1992, Padma Shri in 1999 and Padma Bhushan in 2014. His notable works are Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra, A Flight of Pigeons, The Blue Umbrella, and so on. At present, he is aged 86 years, living in Landore, Mussoorie. The Thief's Story. A young boy makes friends with Anil. Anil trusts him completely and employs him. Does the boy betray his trust? Employ means hire for work in return of payment, and betray means breaks one's faith. So the story is about a young boy who becomes Anil's friend. Anil trusts him completely, entirely, and brings him home. But at the end, this boy tries to break Anil's trust. But does he really break the trust? Or does he regain his trust? Let's see how Anil reacts to it. And let's start reading the story. I was still a thief when I met Anil, and though only 15, I was an experienced and fairly successful hand. An experienced and fairly successful hand here means that this boy was good at whatever work he did. He was a thief and he was expert in robbery. Anil was watching a wrestling match when I approached him. He was about 25, a tall, lean fellow. Lean means slim or thin. And he looked easygoing. Easygoing means very comfortable with. Kind and simple enough for my purpose. I hadn't had much luck of late. Of late means recently. And thought I might be able to get into the young man's confidence. To get into someone's confidence means to gain someone's trust. You look a bit of a wrestler yourself, I said. A little flattery helps in making friends. Flattery means praise. So do you, he replied, which put me off for a moment because at that time I was rather thin. Put me off means disgusted. Well, I said modestly. Modestly means humbly. I do wrestle a bit. What's your name? Asked Anil. Hari Singh. I lied. I took a new name every month that kept me ahead of the police and my former employers. After this introduction, Anil talked about the well-oiled wrestlers who were grunting, lifting, and throwing each other about. I didn't have much to say. Anil walked away I followed casually. Hello again, he said. I gave him my most appealing smile. Appealing means attractive. I want to work for you, I said. But I can't pay you, said Anil. This story is actually about a 15-year-old boy who was a thief. And at that age of 15 years, he was quite experienced and successful in robbing. One day, this boy met a person called Anil, who was 25 years old. He was tall, thin fellow, a very easygoing, kind and simple person. So this boy thought that it'll be easy for him to rob Anil because he was such a simple man, and so he started to become friends with Anil. He had a little bit of conversation on wrestling or being a wrestler to gain this man's, that is Anil's, confidence. And when Anil asked him his name, the boy told him that he was Hari Singh. Now this was a lie spoken by the boy. Since boy was a thief, he used to change his names with every new person so that the police will never catch him. They both were watching wrestling match, and Anil talked a lot about those well-oiled wrestlers who were lifting and throwing each other. And then after that Anil started to walk. But Hari followed him and he asked him to give him some work or to keep him as a servant. But Anil replied him that he cannot pay him. I thought that over for a minute. Perhaps I had misjudged my man. Misjudged means misunderstood or pass a wrong judgment. I asked, "Can you feed me?" "Can you cook?" asked Anil. "I can cook." I lied again. "If you can cook, then maybe I can feed you," said Anil. He took me to his room over the Jamna sweet shop and told I could sleep in the balcony. But the meal I cooked that night must have been terrible because Anil gave it to a stray dog and told me to be off. But I just hung around. Hung around means stayed close by, smiling in my most appealing way, and he couldn't help laughing. Later he patted me on the head and said, "Never mind, he would teach me to cook." He also taught me to write my name and said he would soon teach me to write whole sentences and to add numbers. I was grateful. Grateful means thankful. I knew that once I could write like an educated man, there would be no limit to what I could achieve. It was quite pleasant working for Anil. I made the tea in the morning and then would take my time buying the day's supplies, usually making a profit of about a rupee a day. I think he knew I made a little money this way, but he did not seem to mind. When Anil told this boy, Hari Singh, that he cannot pay him even if he keeps him as a servant, then Hari thinks for a little while and then he asked Anil if he could feed him. Then Anil asked if he could cook. At that point of time, Hari lied the second time. He told that he could cook. So Anil took him to his place, to his room. It was over Jamna sweet shop, and told him that he could stay in the balcony. That night, Hari tried to cook, but the food was terrible, and so Anil had to give away that food to the street dogs. And he was so disgusted or angry with Hari that he told Hari to go out of his house. But Hari did not go. He stayed close by because he wanted to gain confidence of Anil. And then later, Anil also melted. His anger was subsided and he also took Hari back into his room. Anil was really a good person. He taught Hari to cook. He also taught Hari to write his name, and soon he promised him to teach whole sentences and to add numbers also. Hari was also thankful in return. He thought that if he could write like an educated man, then Whatever he did, like robbery and all, or being a thief, he could achieve a lot of success in it. Hari was really happy working for Anil. Every day he made tea in the morning and then he would go to the market to buy a few things. Whatever money Anil gave him to buy those things, out of it, he every day made a 1 rupee profit. Anil knew that he was putting that 1 rupee in his own pocket, but he never objected to it. Anil made money by fits and starts. Fits and starts is an idiom which means not consistently, sometimes. He would borrow 1 week, lend the next. He kept worrying about his next check, but as soon as it arrived, he would go out and celebrate. It seems he wrote for magazines, a queer way to make a living. Queer means strange. One evening, he came home with a small bundle of notes, saying he had just sold a book to a publisher. At night, I saw him tuck the money under the mattress. Tuck means push. I had been working for Anil for almost a month, and apart from cheating on the shopping, had not done anything in my line of work. I had every opportunity for doing so. Anil had given me a key to the door, and I could come and go as I pleased. He was the most trusting person I had ever met. And that is why it was so difficult to rob him. It's easy to rob a greedy man because he can afford to be robbed, but it's difficult to rob a careless man. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he has been robbed, and that takes all the pleasure out of the work. Well, it's time I did some real work. I told myself, I'm out of practice, and if I don't take the money, he'll only waste it on his friends. After all, he doesn't even pay me. Anil did not have a proper job, so he made money only off and on. 1 week he used to borrow the money, another week he used to give it back. He kept worrying about his next payment, and whenever that payment arrived, he would just spend that money in celebration with his friends. He used to write for magazines, and one evening he came home with a bundle of notes. That day he had sold a book to a publisher. He showed the money to Hari Singh and then he pushed that money under the mattress. Hari had been working for Anil for about a month, and apart from cheating on that shopping money and all, he had not done anything extra. He had not taken even a single penny. Anil trusted Hari the most. He had given his room's key to Hari. Hari could go or come as he pleased, and Hari had never seen as trusting person as Anil in his life. But it was not easy to rob a person like Anil because Anil was not a greedy man. He was just a careless man. Even if Hari had robbed him, Anil wouldn't have come to know about this. On the other hand, it's easy to rob a greedy person because he can afford to be robbed. He has got so much of money. But now when Hari saw that bundle of notes, the thief inside him again woke up. He really wanted to do some real work. He was out of practice, and so he was thinking on the lines of taking that money away or robbing Anil of that money. Anil was asleep. A beam of moonlight stepped over the balcony and fell on the bed. Beam means a ray. I sat up on the floor, considering the situation. If I took the money, I could catch the 10:30 express to Lucknow. Slipping out of the blanket, I crept up to the bed. Crept means crawled. Anil was sleeping peacefully. His face was clear and unlined. Even I had more marks on my face, though mine were mostly scars. My hand slid under the mattress, searching for the notes. When I found them, I drew them out without a sound. Anil sighed in his sleep and turned on his side towards me. I was startled and quickly crawled out of the room. Startled means scared. When I was on the road, I began to run. I had the notes at my waist, held there by the string of my pyjamas. I slowed down to a walk and counted the notes. 600 rupees in 50s. I could live like an oil rich Arab for a week or two. This phrase oil rich Arab means like a rich man. So finally, Hari decided that he will rob that money which Anil had got. And at night, when Anil was asleep, he quietly went to Anil's room where he had put the money under the mattress. And Hari had planned that after taking the money, he will catch the 10:30 express to Lucknow and leave that place forever. So, according to his plan, he took the money out and without making a sound, he quickly left the room. When he was on the road, he began to run, and then later on, he slowed down. He counted the notes. There were 600 rupees in the notes of 50 rupees. On seeing so much of money, Hari thought that with this kind of money, he can be so rich. He can live like an oil rich Arab for the next week or two. Now, here, oil rich Arab means that he is comparing himself to a rich man of Arab who makes money out of his oil company. In other words, he felt suddenly that he had become very rich. When I reached the station, I did not stop at the ticket office. I had never bought a ticket in my life, but dashed straight to the platform. The Lucknow Express was just moving out. The train had still to pick up speed, and I should have been able to jump into one of the carriages. But I hesitated. For some reason I can't explain, and I lost the chance to get away. When the train had gone, I found myself standing alone on the deserted platform. Deserted means empty. I had no idea where to spend the night. I had no friends, believing that friends were more trouble than help. And I did not want to make anyone curious by staying at one of these small hotels near the station. The only person I knew really well was the man I had robbed. Leaving the station, I walked slowly through the bazaar. In my short career as a thief, I had made a study of men's faces when they had lost their goods. The greedy man showed fear, the rich man showed anger, the poor man showed acceptance. But I knew that Anil's face, when he discovered the theft, would show only a touch of sadness, not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust. When Hari reached the station, he saw that the Lucknow Express was leaving. It had already started but not picked up the speed. Hari could have easily run and got into one of the carriages, but he suddenly hesitated. Something stopped him, and he did not enter the train. So he lost his chance to run away. When the train had gone, he had no idea where to spend that night because he had no friends. Secondly, he did not want to stay at any hotel to make people curious about him. The only man he knew very well was Anil, the person whom he had robbed. Now he left the station and he walked slowly through the bazaar. And as he was moving through the bazaar, he had various thoughts in his mind. He thought that whenever as a thief he robbed someone, different people gave different expressions. A greedy man showed fear, a rich man showed anger, and a poor man showed acceptance of his own destiny or fate. But now he could imagine what would be the expression on Anil's face. Anil would be sad, not because of the loss of money, but because of the loss of trust which he had in Hari. I found myself in the Maidan. Maidan means a big ground, and sat down on a bench. The night was chilly, It was early November and a light drizzle added to my discomfort. Drizzle means slight rain. Soon it was raining quite heavily. My shirt and pajamas stuck to my skin, and a cold wind blew the rain across my face. I went back to the bazaar and sat down in the shelter of the clock tower. The clock showed midnight. I felt for the notes. They were damp from the rain. Damp means wet. Anil's money. In the morning, he would probably have given me 2 or 3 rupees to go to the cinema. But now I had it all. I couldn't cook his meals, run to the bazaar, or learn to write whole sentences anymore. I had forgotten about them in the excitement of the theft. Whole sentences, I knew, could one day bring me more than a few hundred rupees. It was a simple matter to steal, and sometimes just as simple to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man, was something else. I should go back to Anil, I told myself, if only to learn to read and write. Hari was sitting in a ground on a bench, and that night was a November night. It was very cold, and soon it began to rain. He was all wet in the rain, so he went back to bazaar and sat in the shelter of a clock tower. It was midnight. When he saw the notes were all wet due to the rain. It was Anil's money. Now Hari had a lot of thoughts in his mind. He was a sort of regretting his own action because he had broken the trust of Anil. He thought that otherwise Anil would have given him 2 or 3 rupees to watch a cinema. But now that was not possible. Now he will never be able to cook his meals. He'll never be able to run to bazaar. He'll never be able to learn or write whole sentences which Anil had promised to teach him. In that excitement of theft, Hari had forgotten what all he was learning from Anil. Just for a few hundred rupees, he had broken the trust of Anil. It's a very simple matter to steal and just as simple to be caught. But if one wants to be a big man, then he should be a respectable man also. So Hari thought that he should go back to Anil, not just for anything else, but only to learn to read and write. So once he learns to read and write, he can be a respectable man in society in future. I hurried back to the room feeling very nervous, for it is much easier to steal something than to return it undetected. Undetected means without anyone's knowledge. I opened the door quietly, then stood in the doorway in clouded moonlight. Anil was still asleep. I crept to the head of the bed and my hand came up with the notes. I felt his breath on my hand. I remained still for a minute. Then my hand found the edge of the mattress and slipped under it with the notes. I awoke late next morning to find that Anil had already made the tea. He stretched out his hand towards me. There was a 50-rupee note between his fingers. My heart sank. Heart sank means felt nervous. I thought I had been discovered. I made some money yesterday, he explained. Now you will be paid regularly. My spirits rose. Spirits rose means I became happy. But when I took the note, I saw it was still wet from the night's rain. Today we'll start writing sentences, he said. He knew, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. I smiled at Anil in my most appealing way, and the smile came by itself, without any effort. By now, Hari had completely decided that he would go back and keep the money at its place. So he went back to the room. He again crept to the head of the bed where Anil was still sleeping, and he slipped those wet notes under the mattress. The next morning, Hari awoke quite late. Till then, Anil had already made tea. And when Hari awoke, Anil gave him a 50 rupee note. On seeing that 50 rupee note, Hari became very nervous. He thought that his theft was discovered by Anil. But Anil explained he made some money the day before and now he will regularly pay Hari for his services. On hearing this, Hari was very happy. But when he took the note, he discovered that the note was still wet. And probably Anil would also have discovered what had happened the previous night. But Anil was so good a person that he did not speak about it at all. Neither his lips nor his eyes showed that he actually knew what must have happened. And on top of it, Anil told Hari that he will start teaching him to write sentences. At this, Hari gave his most attractive smile. And that smile was not to please Anil or not a fake smile. It was from his heart. So Anil's behavior changed Hari into a person who became truthful, who never again broke anyone's trust. After the reading and explanation, let's have a quick look at the summary of this chapter. A 15-year-old boy who was in the habit of stealing meets a 25-year-old man named Anil. Anil was a very simple, a kind-hearted person. By looking at the simplicity of Anil, this 15-year-old boy thought that he will be easily able to deceive Anil, and so he asked if he could be his servant. Anil at first refused because he did not have money to pay him monthly, but then later on he took pity on him and kept him as a servant. Though this 15-year-old boy did not know how to cook or how to do the chores, but Anil taught him so. Now this boy, who was basically a thief, had told his name as Hari, which was also a lie, because in every situation he had always changed his name. So to Anil, he tells his name as Hari. Anil did not have a very stable job. He used to write for magazines, and so he could never pay a monthly amount or a monthly salary to Hari. But in return, he had taught Hari to cook. He had taught him to write his name. He had taught him how to shop things from the market. But while getting things from the market, Hari always pinched 1 rupee out of the money and kept it in his pocket. Anil knew about it, but he never said a word. And on top of it, Anil had promised Hari that he would teach to write sentences and also to add numbers. One fine day, Anil got a big lump sum amount from his publisher. That was 600 rupees. When Hari saw it, the thief inside him awoke, and he decided that he'll steal that money and leave that place forever. And that's what he did. At night, he stole the money which was kept under Anil's mattress and left for the railway station. He had planned that he will catch the Lucknow Express at 10:30 in the night and leave. But something stopped him. There was this little voice inside him which stopped him from doing so. He started to regret his own action. He thought about the people that he had deceived, and he thought about this particular man, Anil, whom he had robbed. The very man who had given him shelter, food, taught him to write his own name, and also who had promised him to teach how to write sentences and add up numbers, was such an advantage to Hari. Hari had never seen such a kind and a trusting person. Then how could he break Anil's trust was the main question that lingered in his mind. It started to rain and the notes in his pocket had gone all wet. Hari then decided that he cannot deceive Anil, and so he went back to his room, kept the notes under the mattress where they were, and quietly slept. The next morning, when Hari woke up, he saw that Anil was already awake. Anil handed a 50 rupee note to Hari and promised him that he will be regularly paid, and then he will also be taught how to write sentences. But Hari was really startled because the note was very wet. It was damp. So obviously, Anil knew what must have happened the previous night. But Anil was such a kind-hearted fellow that he chose not to show anything to Hari, neither through his words nor through his eyes. And Anil's behavior towards Hari made Hari a transformed person. He really transformed, and later on, he never broke the trust of anyone in his life. So that's the story. Now let's see what's the significance of the title. The title given to the story, The Thief Story, is apt. It is appropriate because this story talks about a little boy, a 15-year-old boy who was basically a thief, who was addicted to dupe others or to deceive others, to break everyone's trust. But Anil's behavior towards this boy, his kind-heartedness, his trusting nature transformed this boy totally into a very faithful person. So this entire story revolves around this 15-year-old boy's habits of stealing and not being ever caught by the police, and also being transformed into a better person is all that is explained here. And that is why I feel the Thief Story title is absolutely appropriate for this story. If we look at the moral of the story, the theme of the story is entirely based on human values. It is entirely based on the moral values that one possesses, and also how these human values or the interaction can transform even the most criminal of the persons into a very trustworthy and a faithful person. The moral of the story is a kind heart can transform even the toughest heart in this world. So be kind, be generous to everyone, be helpful to others. You never know, you might transform a life. That's all in this session today. And now I'm going to flash the summary in the written form and the question answers based on this chapter. Stay with me till the end, and I'll see you again in my next video. Till then, take good care of yourself. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.